In this video, we take a closer look at the ranking crew. We'll walk through the storyline, briefly summarize the plot, and explore the cast and characters. Along the way, we will also discuss the movie production detail. Finally, we will wrap things up with reviews and share our personal reaction. Let's get started. When we being a conservation about the ranking crew 2026, it is important to slow things down and look at why this film is even worth putting on the table. Not every movie demand discussion, but some invite it because of what they represent within their genre and how they are made and the creative intention behind them. This film falls into that category. It's not just another title on our release calendar, it's a reflection of where the modern action cinema is heading. From a genre perspective, the movie sits firmly in the action space, but not in a simplistic or outdated way. Contemporary action films are no longer just about noise and speed. They are about balance, mixing spectacle with personality, intensity with humor, and chores with control. The film belonged to a generation of action movie that understand audience fatigue. Viewers have seen everything explode before. So the challenge now is how to make the that explosion feel fresh. That alone make the movie worth discussing because it shows how the genre continue to evolve rather than repeat itself. The director's role is another reason this project deserves attention. Action movies live or dive by direction. Camera movement, pacing, framing, and rhythm are not background choices, they are the language of the pullback. Even before talking about performance or story, it is the director's vision that define whether a film feels chaotic or controlled. This movie gives us a chance to examine how modern directors handle large scale entertainment while still maintaining a recognizable style. Then there is the production style, which is where much of the film's identity is shaped. Big action films today operate in a space between realism and stylization. Audience want grit, but they also want flair. The production design, stunt coordination, editing choice, and the sound design all work together to create momentum. Film like this often prioritize movement. Scenes are built to flow, not just exist. The way sequences are assembled, curtain score tell us a lot about the filmmaker's priorities and the audience they are targeting. Another reason this movie is worth discussing is how it reflects industry trend. Action cinema has become more in assemble driven, more polished, and more self aware. That's an understanding now that viewers are media literate. They recognize glitches, they anticipate beats, and they appreciate confidence in execution. A film like The Wrecking Crew gives critics and the viewers an opportunity to talk about whether modern action movies are still pushing forward or simply refining a familiar formula. This form of conservation is not about judgment, yet it's about context. It's about understanding what kind of film this is trying to be. Is it learning into raw fidelity? Is it emphasizing style and swagger? Is it designed for theatrical impact or mass accessibility? These are the kind of questions that make the discussion meaningful before opinion even form. Ultimately, the wrecking crew is worth discussing because it exists at the intersection of genre tradition and modern execution. It represents a style of filmmaking that prioritizes engagement, energy, and technical craft. Whether one ends up loving or criticizing it later, the film offers enough substance in its genre choice, directorial approach, and production design to justify a beautiful conservation. And that exactly what it earned a proper warm up before diving deeper. The production budget of the Wrecking Crew can be understood as a calculated investment. designed to balance scale, star power, and efficiency rather than excess. Although no official budget figure has been publicly confirmed, industry analysis and comparison suggest that the film likely fall within the mid-range action category with an estimated production cost between a $70 million and $100 million. This range is typical for modern action films that aim for high production values without entering blockbuster territory. A significant portion of the budget is expected to have been allocated to talent cost. Films driven by recognizable stars often dedicate a large share of their resource to lead actors, producer, and key creative personnel. In this case, the presence of established action star elevate both the marketability of the film and its upfront cost. These expenses usually include base salaries, performance bonuses, and producer fees, which together can represent one of the largest single budget category in a project of this scale. Another major area of spending lies in physical production and locations. The film decision to shoot in locations such as New Zealand and Hawaii reflect a strategic approach to cost management. New Zealand, in particular, is known for its experienced film crews, strong infrastructure, and tax incentive program, which help offset expenses while maintaining high production standards. However, even with incentives, international shoots still require substantial spending on transportation, accommodation, equipment rental, and logistics. These elements contribute steadily to the overall cost and are essential for achieving a polished cinematic look. Action driven films also allocate a considerable share of their budget to stunts and choreography. Coordinated fight scenes, vehicle sequence, and large scale action movement demand specialized crew, extended rehearsal time, and strict safety measures. Insurance and contingency planning further increase cost in this area. While the wrecking crew does not appear to rely on extreme or record breaking stunt work, the consistent presence of action sequence suggests a meaningful investment in this department. Post production is another key component of the budget. Editing, sound design, music scoring, and visual effect all play a crucial role in shaping the final experience. For a film like this, visual effects are likely used to enhance realism rather than dominate the screen, which help control cost compared to effects heavy fantasy or superhero films. Still, professional post production work remain expensive and essential, particularly for action film where pacing and sound design directly affect audience management engagement. When compared to the similar film, The Wrecking Crew sits comfortably before large theatrical blockbuster that offer exceed $200 million or even $300 million in production cost. At the same time, it is notably more expensive than lower budget action project or independent thriller that operate under $40 million. This places the film in a strategic middle ground where production quality is high enough to meet the audience expectation while financial risk is more tightly managed. Overall, the production budget reflects a deliberate balance between ambition and restraint. Resources appear to have been allocated toward elements that directly enhance on screen value, cast, action, execution, and professional production environment, while avoiding the inflated cost associated with franchise scale filmmaking. From an analytical perspective, this budget level aligns well with the film's genre, distribution strategy, and intended audience reach. The genre and overall mood of the Wrecking Crew play a central role in defining how the film is meant to be experienced. At its core, the movie operates within the action genre, but it does not rely solely on brute force or non-stop intensity. Instead, it blends action with elements of crime and light comedy, creating a hybrid that feels energetic without becoming overwhelming. This genre combination allows the film to appeal to a broad audience, balancing excitement with accessibility and entertainment. Atmospherically, the movie leans toward a sleek modern action feel. The environment is shaped by urban setting, high contrast lighting, and a sense of constant movement. The visual atmosphere suggests tension and momentum rather than darkness or disappear. Even in more serious moments, the film avoids a bleak tone, choosing instead a polish and control aesthetic. This keeps the mood engaging and watchable, emphasizing fun and spectacle over emotional heaviness. Pacing is one of the most defining stylistic elements. The film maintains a consistently risk rhythm designed to hold attention and minimize downtime. Scenes are structured to flow into one another smoothly, with action beats spaced carefully to prevent fatigue rather than relying on relentless chores. The pacing allows short breathing moments between high energy sequence. These pauses help reset the audience before the next surge of movement, creating a rhythm that feels deliberate rather than exhausting. In terms of tones, the movie strikes a balance between seriousness and self awareness. While the stakes are presented as meaningful, the film does not treat itself with excessive gravity. Moments of humor and sharp dialogue soften the intensity and keep the experience entertaining. This tonal balance is common in contemporary action cinema, while filmmakers acknowledge genre convention and play with them instead of strict adhering to a grim or overly dramatic approach. Stylistically, the film favors clean visuals and kinetic framework. Action scenes are framed to emphasize clarity and impact rather than confusion. Camera movement often mirror the physical energy of the characters, reinforcing the sense of motion that drive the story forward. Editing choices are tight and purposeful, avoiding unnecessary lingering shots. This approach supports the film's energetic mood and ensure that momentum remain a priority throughout. Sound design and music further shape the mood. The audience landscape emphasize impact, punches, engines, and environmental sound are mixed to enhance the intensity without drawing out dialogue. The musical scores support the pacing by reinforcing tension during action moment and easing off during quieter scenes. This careful modulation helps maintain emotional balance and keep the audience engaged without overstimulation. Overall, the genre and the mood of the Wrecking Crew 2026 are crafted to deliver high energy entertainment with a controlled, confident tone. The film does not aim for deep psychological exploration or heavy emotional weight. Instead, it focuses on atmosphere, rhythm, and style to create an experience that feels fast, polished, and enjoyable. Its action driven identity combined with a lighter tonal edge and modern stylistic choice defines a mood that is dynamic, accessible, and unmistakably geared toward audience seeking momentum and cinematic excitement. Before watching The Wrecking Crew, audience expectations are sharp, less by plot details and more by signals surrounding the film. Its genre positioning, casting, marketing, tone, and the broader trends of modern action cinema. Expectation matters because they influence how viewers interrupt and what they see on screen. The film entered the conservation with a clear identity, and the most audience approach it with a fairly specific set of assumptions about the experience they are about to have. From a viewer's demographic standpoint, the movie is likely to attract a core audience made up of young adults and adults, particularly those in the late teens to middle age range. Action films traditionally perform well with viewers who enjoy fast pacing and high physical energy, and this movie seems designed with that group in mind. That said, the inclusion of humor and an inaccessible dynamic suggests it's not targeting only hardcore action purists. Casual viewers who enjoy accessible mainstream entertainment are also the part of the expected audience. Many viewers may be streaming the film rather than seeing it in theaters, which often bring in people looking for a fun, engaging watch rather than a deeply challenging cinematic experience. Expectations are also shaped heavily by anticipated themes. Before pressing play, most viewers likely expect familiar action film ideas rather than complex or experimental storytelling. Themes such as teamwork, loyalty, trust, and conflict within partnership are often assumed in movies of this style. Audience generally anticipate a story that emphasizes relationship through action rather than introspective dialogue. There is also expectation of moral clarity even if the character operate in morally gray spaces. Viewers usually expect that film will prioritize momentum and payoff over subtitle thematic exploration. For genre fan expectations are especially specific. Regular action movie viewers tend to look for well executed set pieces, clear choreography, and a sense of physicality that feels convincing. They expect action scenes to be readable and impactful, not overly chaotic or dependent on excessive visual effect. There is also an expectation of consistency. Genre fan want the movie to commit fully to its tone rather than constantly shifting between extremes. If humor is present, it should feel natural and integrated, not disruptive to the tension. Another key expectation involve around pacing. Audience approaching this film likely expect it to move quickly and avoid prolonged exposition. Slow build up or extended quiet sequence might feel out of place to viewers who associate this genre with constant forward motion. At the same time, many viewers now expect a more refined rhythm than older action film offer. There is an assumption that the movie will balance energy with clarity, allowing viewers to stay engaged without feeling overwhelmed. Statistically, audience often expect a polished modern look. Clean cinematography, dynamic camera work, and immersive sound design are now baseline expectation rather than bonuses. Viewers assume that an action film released in 2026 will meet contemporary technical standard. Anything that feels visually flat or poorly edited would quickly stand out as disappointment. This expectation is particularly strong among younger viewers who are accustomed to high production value across streaming platforms. Audience expectations are also influenced by marketing and reputation. Before watching, viewers likely expect the films to deliver entertainment rather than innovation. The title itself suggests intensity and disruption, signaling that the movie will lean into bold action rather than subtitle drama. Most audience probably do not expect the film to redefine the genre, but they do expect it to execute familiar element with confidence and style. Overall, before watching this film, audience generally expect a fun, high energy action experience, respect genre convention while delivering modern polish. Viewers' demographics suggest a broad but action-leaning audience. Anticipated themes point toward teamwork and momentum, and genre fans expect competence, clarity, and commitment to tone. These expectations set the framework through which the film will ultimately be judged, less on originality and more on how well it fulfills the promise it makes before the first scene even being. When looking at the Wrecking Crew 2026 through the lens of target audience, it becomes clear that the film is crafted with a specific kind of viewers in mind rather than aiming to satisfy every possible demographic. Its genre choices, tone, pacing, and production style all point toward an audience that feel energy, accessibility, and entertainment driven storytelling. Understanding who his movie is made for helps explain many of its creative decisions. From an age group perspective, the primary target audience appear to be young adults and adults roughly ranging from the late teens through the mid 40s. Viewers in this range are typically more receptive to fast paced action, stylized violence, and confident tonal shift between intensity and humor. The movie's rhythm and presentation suggest it is not designed for every young audience, as the action element and mature themes require a certain level of media maturity. At the same time, it does not skew toward an older Arthos crowd that prefers slow, more introspective films. Instead, it occupies a middle ground that is energetic without being juvenile. In terms of interest, this film clearly targets viewers who enjoy spectacle and momentum. It is made for people who watch movies primarily for engagement and excitement rather than deep psychological exploration. Viewers who appreciate coordinated action sequence, physical performance, and visually dynamic scenes are likely to feel at home here. The film also appealed to audiences who enjoy ensemble driven stories, where chemistry and interaction between characters matter as much as the action itself. For these viewers, the player comes from watching personalities clash, align, and move together within high stakes situation. And other key interest group include viewers who prefer accessible mainstream entertainment. This is the kind of movie suited for a relaxed reviewing experience, something to watch on a weekend evening or as a shared group activity. It does not demand extensive prior language, intense emotional investment, or repeated viewing to understand its appeal. People who enjoy streaming action film as a form of escapism rather than analysis as a part of the intended audience. The movie structure and tone support this kind of consumption, emphasizing clarity and flow. When it comes to genre preferences, the ranking crew is firmly aimed at fans of modern action cinema. These are viewers who enjoy films that blend traditional action elements with contemporary style. They likely appreciate practical stunt mixed with controlled visual effect, crisp editing, and strong sound design. Genre fan who enjoy crime, action, hybrid, body dynamic, or ensemble thriller will find the film align with their taste. It is less suited for viewers who prefer slow burn dramas, experimental narrative, or heavily symbolic storytelling. The movie also appealed to viewers who value tone consistency within a genre. It is made for people who want a film to commit to its identity rather than constantly subverting expectations. The balance of seriousness, that light humor, cater to audience who enjoy action films that acknowledge their own intensity without undetermining it. For this audience, entertainment value is closely tied to confidence in execution. On the other hand, the film is not primarily aimed at viewers seeking emotional depth or complex moral inquiry. Those who prefer character studies, subtitle thematic layering, or minimalistic filmmaking may find the movie too direct or conventional. This is not a weakness but a reflection of clear target audience. The film understands who it is for and focuses its energy accordingly. Overall, the ranking crew of this 2026 is made for action oriented viewers who value pace, style, and accessibility. Its target audience include young to middle-aged adults with interest in mainstream entertainment and genre-driven storytelling. By prioritizing engagement over experimentation, the film positions itself as a confident entry in modern action cinema designed to satisfy viewers who want excitement, clarity, and a strong sense of momentum from start to finish. The emotional experience promised by this film is still around engagement, momentum, and control intensity rather than deep emotional interception. From the moment viewers approach the film, the expectation is not to be challenged emotionally interception in a heavy or unsettling way, but to be carried through a dynamic experience that keep attention high and stress level enjoyable. The film emotional design is deliberate, shaping how audience feels scene by scene rather than asking them to reflect deeply afterward. In terms of mood, the film is establishing an atmosphere that is energetic and confident. The dominant emotional tone leans toward excitement and anticipation, creating a sense of forward motion that rarely slows. Even in moments of tension, the mood avoid despair or darkness. Instead, it maintain a polished, control intensity that reassure the audience that the journey is meant to be entertaining rather than emotionally draining. This mood encouraging viewer to relax into the experience, trusting that the film will deliver stimulation without overwhelming them. The movie also carries an undercurrent of fun and self awareness, while the action and conflict are presented seriously enough to maintain stakes. The overall emotional environment is not oppressive. This is room for lightness, sharp exchange, and moments that relieve tension. This balance keeps the experience accessible, allowing viewer to enjoy the light highs without lingering anxiety. The mood is designed to be uplifting in its energy, even when the situation on screen are intense. Looking at themes, the emotional core of the film is rooted in connection rather than interception. Themes such as teamwork, loyalty, and mutual alliance are meant to generate feeling of reassurance and satisfaction. Audience are invited to emotionally invest in the idea that cooperation and shared purpose can overcome conflict. These themes are familiar and confronting, reinforcing a sense of stability within the chores of action. The emotional suspense they aim to create is not sadness or tragedy, but solidity and momentum. Another important thematic element is resilience. The film emphasizes endurance and adaptability, encouraging an emotional response tied to determination and persistence. Viewers are likely to feel motivated by its aspect, experiencing a subtitle sense of empowerment rather than vulnerability. The emotional message is clear. Obstacle exists to be confronting head on, and emotional payoff come from moments and progress rather than reflection. The intended impact of the film is to leave confidence feeling energized rather than lingering melancholy or deep contemplation. The emotional takeaway is closer to satisfaction and excitement Viewers are meant to finish the movie with a sense of completion and engagement, feeling that they have experienced something active and immersive. This type of emotional impact aligns well with the film's genre and pacing, reinforcing its identity as entertainment first cinema. The movie also aimed to create a shared emotional experience. It is designed to be enjoyed collectively, whether with friends, family members, or a broader audience. The emotional beats are broad and readable, making them easy to connect with regardless of background. This inclusivity is part of the film's emotional promise. It seeks to unite viewers around a common rhythm of excitement and release. The ranking crew promise an emotional experience centered on energy, confidence, and control tension. Its mood remains lively and engaging. Its theme encourages connection and resilience, and its intended impact is to leave viewers feeling entertained and invigorated. The film does not ask for emotional vulnerability from its audience. Instead, it offers a reliable, stimulating emotional ride designed to satisfy and uplift rather than challenge or unsettle. At its core, the ranking crew is built around an idea that feels familiar yet deliberately sharpened for a modern audience. The notion that disruption can be a form of order and that progress often comes from individual or force willing to break what no longer works. The film's story concept is less concerned with specific event and more focused on the emotional and thematic implication of control, chaos. In abstract terms, it explores what happens when systems collide with personalities that refuses to fit neatly inside them. One of the central themes driving the film is cooperation and repression. The story is structured around the idea that individuals with different method, instinct, and motivation must find common around ground in order to move forward, rather than presenting unity as something neutral or effortless. The film treats it as a negotiated state, something earned through friction. This theme resonates on a symbolic level, suggesting that meaningful outcomes are rarely achieved through comfort or uniformity, but through tension and compromise. Another important theme is identity with action. The film abstract story concept implies that who we are is often revealed not in moment of calm but in moment of urgency. The narrative framework places its character in choice where choice is is compressed by time and consequence. In doing so, the story suggests that identity is not static, it is shape and clarity through movement, risk, and response. The emphasis is not on reflection after the fact but on instant in the moments. The message embedded within its structure center on adaptability. The film treats rigidity as a weakness and flexibility as a strength. System rules and expectation exist, but the story core idea challenges our notions that they should be followed blindly. Instead, the narrative implies that progress requires reinterpretation, knowing what to follow structure and when to dismantle it. This message aligns with the film's energetic tone, reinforcing the idea that motion responsiveness are comparable to stagnation. A recurring conceptual thread is trust under instability. The story abstract foundation suggests that trust is not built in safe environment but tested in volatile ones. Relationship from not through sheer comfort but through sheer risk. This idea elevates the story beyond simple collaboration and turn into an examination of how reliance is forged when outcomes are uncertain. The trust that emerges is not idealized, it is practical, conditional, and earned through action. The film also explored the theme of controlled destruction. The title itself at a paradox: destruction used with purpose rather than recklessness. On a conceptual level, the story argues that breaking things is not inherently negative if it leads to reconstruction. This applies not only to physical structure but to habits, assumptions, and hierarchies. The narrative suggests that disruption, when guided by intention, can clear space for something more effective to emerge. In abstract storytelling terms, the movie operates as a movement driven story narrative. Progress is measured not by revelation but by forward motion. The story concept values momentum over contemplation, implying that understanding often follows action rather than precedes it. This approach reflects a worldview in which clarity is achieved through engagement, not distance. The film's core idea, therefore, aligns action with meaning, positioning physical movement as a metaphor for internal alignment. Another underlying message is shared responsibility. The story resists the idea of a single dominance force slowing everything alone. Instead, it frames success as collective and failure as disrupted. This reinforces a broader thematic stances. Outcomes are shaped by interaction rather than isolation. Even in conflict, the story implies that on no action exists in a vacuum and every choice ripples toward outward. Ultimately, the core idea of this film is about redefining order through disruption. Its theme revolves around cooperation, adaptability, trust, and purposeful destruction. The message is not that choice should rule, but that rigidity must sometimes be challenged to restore balance. The story concept operates on an abstract level where action becomes philosophy, movement becomes meaning, and collaboration becomes the engine of change. In this way, the film presents a worldview that value resilience, flexibility, and shared moment as the true force behind progress. The central conflict of this film is best understood not as a single external struggle but as a layered tension between order and disruption, certainty and improvisation, and individual instinct versus collective responsibility. Rather than relying on a straightforward opposition, the film built its conflict around moral and psychological pressure points that continuously test alignment, trust, and purpose. This abstract approach allows the conflict to feel persistent and dynamic without being tied to specific event. At the heart of the conflict lies a moral dilemma where effectiveness justifies unconventional method. The story places its character in situations where traditional rules and structures are insufficient to address the challenges they face. This creates an ongoing ethical tension between doing what is sanitation and doing what is necessary. The conflict does not present clear moral binaries. Instead, it asks whether outcomes can validate choice that challenge established form. This dilemma fuels much of the internal strain as success often come at the cost of comfort or approval. Another key role of the conflict emerges through competing values within cooperation. The narrative framework suggests that collaboration is not inherently harmonious. Individual bring different priorities, risk threshold, and interpretation of responsibility. The tension arises when these different collide under pressure. The film treats disagreement not as temporary obstacle but as a constant condition that must be managed. The central conflict in this sense becomes about whether unity can be maintained without suppressing individuality. The challenge of trust plays a significant role in sustaining tension. Trust in the story is provincial rather than absolute. It is shaped by action, consistency, and reliability under stress. The conflict deepens as character must decide how much faith to place in one another when the margin for error is slim. This creates a psychological struggle that parallel the external pressure, making trust both a tool and a risk. The uncertainty surrounding reliability heighten the sense of instability that defines the film's core struggle. A further dimension of the conflict involves control versus adaptability. The story repeatedly emphasizes environments that are unpredictable and resistant to rigid planning. The central challenge becomes deciding whether to impose structure or chores or to move with it. This tension reflects a broader philosophical conflict, the desire for control versus the necessity of responsiveness. The film frames adaptability as a strength but not without cost. Letting go of control introduce vulnerability, and that vulnerability become a source of ongoing tension. The film also explores personal limits under collective pressure. The conflict is sustained by the strain placed on individuals who must perform with a shared objective. Personal boundaries, ethical lines, and emotional endurance are tested as the demand for result intensifies. The story suggests that conflict is not only external but internal, as individual grapples with how far they are willing to go for a collective outcome. This internal struggle adds depth to the central conflict by grounding it in human resistance rather than abstract stakes. Tension is further amplified by the absence of clear resolution path. The narrative avoids presenting obvious solution or straightforward victories. Each potential resolution carries consequences that feed back into the conflict. This cyclic tension keeps the story active as progress often introduces new complications rather than closure. The conflict therefore becomes self-sustaining, driven by choices that solve one problem while creating another. Ultimately, the central conflict of this film revolves around the question of whether cohesion can survive under sustained pressure. The moral dilemmas challenge ethical certainty, the ongoing challenges test adaptability and the persistent tension arise from balancing individual integrity with collective necessity. By framing conflict as an evolving state rather than a single confrontation, the film creates a sense of continuous strain that defines its narrative identity without relying on specific plot detail. The theme explored in this movie are grounded in contemporary concern about responsibility, cooperation, and ethical flexibility in high pressure environment. Rather than focusing on a single idea, the film weaves together multiple thematic threads that reflect modern social, emotional, and moral tensions. These themes operate beneath the surface of the action, shaping how audience interpret characters' behavior, conflict, and resolution. One of the most prominent ethical questions raised by the film center on the justification of unconventional choices. The story challenges the idea that morality is fixed and universal, instead, presenting ethics as situational and reactive. Characters are repeatedly placed in positions where traditional rules fail to suffer clear guidance. This creates a thematic tension between legality and legitimacy, between what is officially acceptable and what it feels necessary in the moment. The film does not provide easy answers, instead, encouraging viewers to question whether success excuses moral compromise or whether some lines should remain uncrossed regardless of outcome. Closely connected to this is the theme of collective responsibility. The movie explores how accountability shifts when actions are taken as part of a group rather than individually. Decisions are rarely made in isolation, and consequences are shared unevenly. This raises questions about blame, leadership, and moral defiance. When everyone is involved, who is truly responsible? The film uses this tension to examine how individuals justify their action when supported by group consensus, and how personal ethics can be diluted or reinforced by collective pressure. On an emotional level, the film traces subtle but meaningful emotional arc rooted in trust, resilience, and mutual dependence. Emotional growth is not expressed through overt vulnerability but through evolving development, is reflected in how they adopt, endure, and support one another. The film suggests that emotional strength is not the absence of fear or doubt, but the ability to function alongside it. This creates an arc where emotional maturity is measured by consistency rather than transformation. Another key emotional theme is connection through adversity. The story emphasizes that meaningful bonds are often forged in unstable conditions rather than safe environment. Emotional closeness emerges not from sheer comfort but from sheer risk. This idea reinforced the film's broader message about trust being earned through action. The emotional payoff comes from reliability and presence rather than confusion or sentimentality, aligning with the film's restrained but purposeful emotional tone. From a broader perspective, the movie engages with several cultural topics relevant to modern audience. One such topic is the tension between system and individuals. The film reflects a cultural skepticism toward rigid institution and beauty or occultic solutions, suggesting that adaptability and human judgment are often more effective than strict adherence to procedure. This theme resonates in a world where audience increasingly question authority structure and value improvisation and problem solving over formal hierarchy. The film also touches on the cultural normalization of constant urgency. Its fast pacing and pressure driven narrative mirror a society accustomed to immediacy, multitasking, and rapid decision making. By framing urgency as the default state, the movie reflects how modern life often leaves little room for pause or reflection. This cultural backdrop reinforces the emotional and ethical strain experienced by the character, making their challenges feel familiar rather than exaggerated. Another cultural theme involves strength and identity. The film subtly challenges traditional definition of strength by emphasizing cooperation over dominance, Power is not portrayed as solitary control but as the ability to function with the complexity and uncertainty. This reflects a cultural shift away from individual heroism towards sheer competence. Identity in this context is shaped by contribution rather than station. Status reinforcing the idea that value is proven through liability and action. The theme of adaptation versus rigidity also carry cultural weight. The film's positions adaptability as essential in an unpredictable world, framing rigidity as a liability rather than a virtue. This theme speaks to contemporary anxieties about change, instability, and resilience. It suggests that survival, whether emotional, ethical, or professional, depend on the ability to evolve rather than resist. This film explores themes that extend beyond action-driven spectacle through ethical questions about justification and responsibility, emotional arcs centered on trust and endurance, and cultural topic reflecting modern uncertainty and collaboration. The film presents a layered thematic landscape. These themes work together to give the movie depth without slowing its momentum, allowing it to engage audience not just physically but intellectually and emotionally as well. The emotional connection between this film and its viewer is still through immersion rather than introspection. The story does not ask the audience to pause and analyze feeling in a traditional dramatic sense. Instead, it creates a steady emotional rhythm that pulls viewer into the experience and keep them aligned with the character momentum. This approach reflects the film's commitment to engagement, using mood, theme, and pacing to establish an emotional bond that feel active rather than reflective. The mood of the film play a crucial role in this connection. From the outset, the atmosphere is charged with energy and forward motion. This mood encourages viewer to emotionally synchronize with the pace of the story. The sense of urgency becomes shared, drawing the audience into a state of heightened alertness and anticipation. Rather than observing events from audience, viewers are emotionally positioned alongside the characters, experiencing tension and release in real time. This alignment creates a form of emotional participation where engagement itself becomes the connection. At the same time, the mood is carefully controlled to avoid emotional exhaustion. The film balances intensity with moments of levity and calm, allowing viewer to reset emotionally without disengaging. This shift prevents the experience from becoming overwhelming and help maintain trust between the film and its audience. Viewer feel guided rather than manipulated, which strengthen emotional investment. The consistency of tone reassures the audience that the story understands its own limit and respect the viewer's emotional endurance. The film themes further deepen emotional connection by reflecting universal experience. Theme of compression, trust under pressure, and shared responsibility resonate because they mirror real world dynamic. Most viewers are familiar with situations where success depends on working with others despite differences, uncertainty, or personal hesitation. By framing these themes through action and urgency rather than dialogue heavy exposition, the film allows viewers to recognize themselves in the experience without being explicitly told how to feel. Another emotional connective theme is resilience. The story emphasizes persistence in the face of ongoing challenge, which tap into a widely shared emotional reality. Viewers often connect with narratives that reflect endurance rather than perfection. The film's emotional appeal lies in its portrayal of continued effort even when outcomes are unclear. This creates a quiet sense of affirmation, encouraging viewer to emotionally invest in the idea that progress comes from movement rather than certainty. The viewer experience is designed to be immersive and inclusive. The emotional beats are broad and readable, making them accessible across different background and viewing contexts. Whether watching alone or with others, viewers can easily follow the emotional flow without needing specialized knowledge or deep analysis. This accessibility strengthens emotional connection by removing barrier to engagement. The film does not require emotional decoding, it invites emotional participation. Sheer rhythm also play a key role in how viewers connect emotionally. The film pacing and character create predictable pattern of tension and release that align with human emotional processing. This rhythm allows viewer to participate emotional shift which foster comfort and involvement. The emotional experience become familiar and satisfying, reinforcing the bond between the audience and the narrative. Additionally, the film avoids isolating its audience through excessive complexity or ambiguity, while it raises ethical and emotional questions. It does so within a framework that prioritizes clarity and momentum. This ensures that viewers remain emotionally present rather than distracted or disengaged. This connection is maintained through consistency rather than surprise. Ultimately, the film connects emotionally with viewers by offering an experience rooted in energy, relatability, and sheer momentum. Its mood drawn audience in a state of active engagement. Its theme reflects common emotional realities, and its viewer experience is designed to be immersive and accessible. The emotional bond it creates is not based on deep vulnerability or tragedy, but on alignment, inviting viewers to move with the story, feel its rhythm, and share in its drive from beginning to end. The character framework of this film is built around strong contrast, with the narrative driven primarily by the dynamic between Ben Harris and John J.T. Torres. Rather than focusing on deep psychological introspection, the film uses these characters as forces in motion, personalities shaped by pressure, experience, and instant. From a critical standpoint, the character writing succeed by prioritizing clarity, chemistry, and functional tension, which are essential for a momentum driven action film. Ben Harris is operate as the stabilizing presence at the center of the story. He fit the archetype of the season operator, confident, assertive, and grounded in experience. His personality is defined by control and calculation rather than emotional expression. Harris is the kind of the character who believes in structure even when working within chaos. He approaches challenges with an Meyer mindset, suggesting someone who has learned to survive by thinking ahead rather than reacting emotionally. As a lead character, Harris provides narrative balance, giving the story a sense of direction and authority. In contrast, John J.T. Torres functions as the disruptive counterweight. Where Harris is controlled, Torres is intensive. His archetype aligns with the rule breaker, someone who trusts action over planning and impulse over patience. Torres brings volatility to the dynamic not because he lacks competence, but because his personality resists constraint. This trait injects unpredictability into the story, keeping scene alive with tension. From a reviewer perspective, Taurus exists to challenge Harris' method, forcing constant innovation between discipline and improvisation. The interaction between Harris and Taurus form the emotional and thematic backbone of the film. Their relationship is not built on immediate trust or emotional bonding, but on reluctant cooperation. This dynamic reflects a modern approach to action-character relationship where respect is earned through reliability rather than sentiment. Their exchange are shaped by friction, timing, and mutual testing, making their partnership feel functional rather than idealized. In terms of personality trait, both characters share resilience and competence but express them differently. Harris demonstrates resilience through restraint and consistency. Taurus expresses it through adaptability and raw energy. Neither character is portrayed as flawless. Mistakes occur, but they are framed as tactical missteps rather than moral failure. This keeps the character grounded and prevent them from becoming exaggerated caricatures. From an archetypical standpoint, the film deliberately avoids emotional extreme. Harris is not a cold, detached authority figure, and Taurus is not a reckless liability. Instead, they exist in a calibrated middle space that feel contemporary. Their personalities reflect modern action storytelling, where strength is defined by adaptability and cooperation rather than dominance. Secondary characters, while less prominent, reinforce these traits by reflecting and reaching to the heads. They serve as pressure points rather than narrative drivers, helping to highlight Harris' leadership instinct and Taurus' resistance to limitation. The ensemble support the central duo without distracting from it, maintaining focus on the primarily dynamic. As a reviewer, the strength of the character work lies in its efficiency. The film understands its genre and does not overreach emotionally. Ben Harris and John J.T. Taurus are not designed to be deeply introspective figure, but they are sharply defined and consistent. Their archetypes are familiar yet updated with restraint and self awareness. The chemistry between them carries the film energy, ensuring that character interaction remain as engaging as the action itself. Overall, the film succeeds in crafting characters who feel purposeful and effective. Ben Harris embodies control authority while John J.T. Torres represents intensive disruption. Together they create a balanced and engaging character dynamic that support the film pacing, tone, and thematic direction without demanding emotional excess. The acting performance in this film are central to how the film connects with its audience on an emotional level. While the movie is driven by action and momentum, it is the performance that give weight to the experience, grounding spectacle in personality and presence. Rather than aiming for dramatic transformation, the cast focuses on emotional consistency, physical confidence, and relational energy. Choices that align closely with the film's tone and genre. At the forefront are the lead actor Jensen Momoa and Davy Bautista, whose performances form the emotional spin of the film. Momoa brings a familiar but effective intensity to his role. His performance is rooted in physical assurance and emotional steadiness. There is a calm force to how he occupies the screen, conveying confidence without needing excessive dialogue. Emotionally, his performance leans toward controlled strength instead of overt vulnerability. He expresses feeling through restraint, small shift in posture, timing, and reaction. This approach creates a sense of reliability that invites audience trust. Bautista, on the other hand, delivers a performance driven by contrast. Emotionally, his presence feels more volatile and reactive, which add texture to the film's emotional landscape. He plays intensity differently, less contained, more immediate. His expression and physicality communicate internal pressure and impulsiveness, creating moments that feel charged even when the dialogue is minimal. Busticial emotional strength lies in his ability to project conflict without turning it into melodrama. His performance adds friction, and that friction is essential to the film's emotional rhythm. The emotional impact of the film is amplified by the chemistry between these two leads. Their sheer screen time is marked by tension that feel intentional and lived in. Rather than relying on overt emotional exchange, their chemistry is built through timing, pauses, and reaction. There is a sense that both characters are constantly reading each other, testing boundaries, and adjusting in real time. This creates an emotional push and pull that keep the audience engaged. The chemistry does not aim to be warm or sentimental, instead it feels functional and earned, which suits the film's grounded action tone. The supporting cast play a quieter but important emotional role. While they are not given the same narrative weight as the lead, their performance helps shape the emotional environment. Supporting actor contribute stability, urgency, and contrast, reinforcing the stake without competing for attention. Their emotional presence help make the world feel populated and reactive rather than isolated around the main dude. Even brief performance add to the film's emotional credibility by grounding scene in sheer awareness and consequence. Emotionally, the ensemble work because no performance feel out of place. There is a consistent emotional register across the cast, which prevent tonal disruption. Nobody overplays intensity and nobody undercurrent tension unnecessarily. This balance allows the audience to remain emotionally immersed rather than distracted by performance inconsistencies. The acting choices support the film's promise of engagement without demanding emotional heaviness. One of the film's strengths is how the performance respect the audience's emotional intelligence. The actors do not explain feeling through dialogue, they allow emotion to emerge through behavior. This creates space for viewer to project their own interpretation, strengthening emotional connection. The audience is not told what to feel, they are invited to feel alongside the character through sheer momentum and pressure. For an emotional standpoint, the acting in this film succeeds because it understands the film's purpose. Jensen Momoa provide emotional grounding through steadiness and presence. Davy Bautista inject emotional energy through intensity and unpredictability. The supporting cast reinforce the emotional ecosystem, and the chemistry between performer transform action into interaction. Together, these performances ensure that the film emotional experience feel cohesive, engaging, and human anchor, not in dramatic excess but in controlled, purposeful expression. When discussing realism and depth in this film, it's important to understand that the film does not aim for strict realism in the traditional grounded drama sense. Instead, it pursues a form of generalism, one that feels believable with the heightened world of modern action cinema. The depth of its character is not measured by introspective monologue or complex black stories, but by consistency, emotional restraint, and how character respond under sustained pressure. In terms of character development, The film adopts an incremental approach rather than a transformational one. Characters do not undergo dramatic emotional shift. Instead, they evolve through adjustment. Development is shown through changes in behavior, decision making, and interaction. The subtitle progression feel realistic with the context of the story, as people under constant pressure rarely experience sudden emotional breakthrough. Growth appear in how the character learn to anticipate each other, adopt their strategies, and recalibrate trust. This method of development align well with the film's pacing and avoid interrupting momentum. Believability is reinforced by the way characters operate with their environment. While the action itself is stylized, the reaction to that action feel grounded. Character display fatigue, hesitation, and recalculation rather than endless confidence. This restraint contribute to a sense of authenticity. Even when situations are exaggerated, the film understands that realism does not require literal accuracy but emotional logic. As long as the reaction makes sense, audience remain invested. The performance further support believability through control, emotional expression, rather than amplifying feeling for dramatic effect. The actor rely on physical cues, timing, and silence. This choice reflects how people often behave in high stress situations. Emotion is managed, not displayed. The absence of excessive emotional explanation strengthens realism by allowing viewer to infer internal states. The film trusts its audience to read between the lines, which enhance immersion. When examining emotional range, the film deliberately limits extreme. Characters do not swing wildly between despair and dream. Instead, their emotional spectrum is focused on determination, frustration, tension, and restrained relief. This narrow but constant range suits the genre and reinforces authenticity. In high intensity environment, emotional survival often depend on regulation rather than expression. The film captured this idea effectively, presenting characters who feel human without being emotionally exposed. Depth is also achieved through relational dynamics. Characters are defined not only by who they are individually but how they interact. Power shift, silent agreement, and moment of hesitation all contribute to layer characterization. These small rational detail create depth without slowing the narrative. The audience come to understand character through pattern rather than explanation, which feel more realistic and less manufactured. Importantly, the film avoids the pitfall of artificial complexity. It does not burden character with symbolic trauma or exaggerated internal conflict simplified to appear deep. Instead, it treats competence and resilience as meaningful traits. Depth emerges from endurance and consistency rather than suffering. This approach may feel understated, but it aligns with the film's identity and audience expectations. Overall, this film balances realism and depth by grounding its character emotionally, even within a stylized action framework. Character development is subtitle and behavior driven. Believability is maintained through emotional logic and restraint, and emotional range is controlled by purposeful. The result is a cast of a character who feel credible, functional, and human, anchored not by dramatic exposition but by realistic reaction to sustained pressure. When looking at this film from a production budget perspective, it is useful to approach the topic with realism rather than spectacle. This is not the kind of film that aim to compete with billions-dollar franchise, but it is also fair remove from low budget action cinema. Based on industry pattern for star-driven streaming-focused action film, the production budget is best understood within a mid to upper range, likely falling somewhere between 70 and 90 million dollars. That estimate reflects the film's scale, cast, location, and technical demand without pushing it into blockbuster excess. A significant portion of this budget would naturally be allocated to above the line costs, with recognizable lead actor anchoring the project. Talent compensation become one of the largest financial commitment. These costs typically include actors' salaries, producer fees, and payment to key creative roles such as the director and the writers. In films of this type, star power is not only a creative decision but also a strategic one. As familiar faces help a streaming platform justify the investment and attract a broad audience, this category alone can account for a large share of the total spending, sometime approaching one third of the overall budget. Another major area of the resource allocation lies in physical production. The film's use of real location rather than entirely studio based environment add both authenticity and expense. Shooting in visually striking region require travel, housing for cast and crew, local hires permit, and the transportation of equipment. While these factors raise costs, they also reduce reliance on digital backdrop and help the movie maintain a grounded tactile look. In many cases, international locations are chosen not only for aesthetic but also for favorable production incentives, which can help offset expenses and stretch the budget more effectively. Because this film is positioned as an action forward film, stunts and physical choreography also represent a meaningful investment. Even without heavy visual effects, spectacle action scene demand specialized stunt performers, safety coordinator, rehearsals, and additional shooting days. These sequences often involve second unit crew working in parallel within the main production, which increases daily cost but allow the film to deliver energy and momentum that audience expect from the genre. Post production is another area where the budget play a crucial role. Editing, sound design, music scoring, and visual position all contribute to how impactful the final film feels. Modern audiences are particularly sensitive to sound and pacing, especially in action movies, and these elements require time and skill. Personals, even modest visual effect enhancements such as environmental cleanup or action reinforcement add to cost without necessarily being obvious on screen. When comparing this budget range to similar film, the positioning becomes clearer. Large theatrical action franchise often succeed 200 or even 300 million dollar due to extensive global shoot, massive effect work, and marketing expectation. On the other hand of the spectrum, smaller action dramas may operate comfortably below 50 millions by limiting location, cast size, and action complexity. The film sits between these extremes, aiming for a polished, muscular presentation within the financial risk of mega blockbuster. It is also important to separate production budget from marketing spend. Streaming oriented release generally rely less on traditional advertising campaigns and more on platform visibility and digital promotions. This allows the production itself to absorb a higher promotion of the overall investment, focusing resource on what appear on screen rather than on external publicity. Now we will talk about the production budget of this film reflect a control and strategic approach. The estimated cost range supports strong performance, practical location, and solid action design while avoiding unnecessary excess. It positions the film as a confident mid-scale action project designed to look expensive enough to satisfy genre fans while remaining financially disciplined within the modern streaming landscape. When discussing domestic box office performance for this film, context matter more than raw number. This is a film designed for a modern distribution landscape where theoretical revenue is no longer the only or even the primarily measure of success. In the domestic market, particularly the United States and Canada, the movie did not follow the traditional wide release theatrical model. As a result, its domestic box office earnings are either minimal or largely upset, not because of lack of interest but because the release strategy itself shifted the focus away from ticket sales. In recent years, the domestic region has seen a clear divide between event style blockbuster and mid budget genre film. Big franchise titles still dominate theater, while many action films built around recognizable stars are increasingly rooted towards streaming platform. The film fits squarely into this second category rather than competing for screen and weekend grosses. It was positioned to reach audience directly in their home. This approach removed the pressure of opening weekend number and long theatrical legs, replacing them with quieter but broader accessibility. Audience trend in the domestic market strongly support this strategy. Many viewers who enjoy action film are now comfortable watching them outside theaters, especially when the movie is not tied to an ongoing cinematic universe or must-see spectacle. For these audience, convenience outweigh the theoretical experience. This shift is particularly noticeable among adult viewers who grew up with traditional action cinema but now prefer on demand viewing. As a result, the absence of a domestic box office total does not signal disinterest. Instead, it reflects changing consumption habits. If the film had received a traditional domestic release, expectation would likely have placed it in the mid-range action category. Comparable films with similar star power and genre appeal often open modestly and rely on steady attendance rather than explosive debut. In today's crowded theatrical market, such films can struggle to stand out against franchise heavy competition. By avoiding this space, this film sidestep direct comparison with tentpole releases that dominate domestic earning charts. From a comparison standpoint, theatrical action films that succeed domestically often benefit from built-in fan base, sequel momentum, or large-scale spectacle. Film without these advantages may earn respectful table but unremarkable domestic totals, sometimes failing to justify their marketing and distribution cost. In contrast, a streaming focused release eliminate those risks. Instead of asking how many tickets were sold, the more relevant question becomes how many viewers choose to watch and how long they stay engaged and whether the film strengthen the platform overall appeal. Domestic audience response also tend to be more fragmented now than in previous decade. Some viewers still prioritize theater, while others have fully transitioned to streaming first habit. The film clearly targeting the later group. For these viewers, the idea of domestic box office success is less meaningful than immediate access, familiar faces, and reliable genre entertainment. This aligns with broader trends showing that mid-scale action films often perform better in domestic streaming environment than they would in theaters. In that sense, the lack of a domestic box office figure becomes the part of the story rather than a missing piece. It highlights how success is being redefined. Instead of measuring popularity through ticket revenue, the film domestic impact is better understood through cultural visibility, audience discussion, and platform engagement. Comparatively, while theatrical hits may boost impressive domestic totals, streaming release aim for sustain attention rather than headline grabbing numbers. Overall, this film occupy a space where domestic box office earnings are no longer the primarily benchmark. Its domestic presence is shaped by audience trend favoring at home viewing and by a distribution model that value reach and engagement over ticket sale. In comparison to traditional theatrical action film, it reflects a quieter but increasingly common form of domestic success in the modern film industry. When analyzing the international box office performance of this film, it's essential to separate traditional expectation from the realities of its release strategy. Much like its domestic situation, the film did not rely on a broad theatrical rollout across global market. As a result, international box office earnings are limited, uneven, and not reflective of overall audience interest. Rather than being shaped by ticket sales alone, the film's international footprint is influenced by where it was shown theatrically, where it was not, and how audience outside North America currently consume action film. From a regional perspective, the movie theatrical presence overseas was selected at best in major international territories such as Western Europe, Latin America, and part of Asia Pacific. The film either had a very limited cinema release or bypassed theaters entirely. This immediately capped its earning potential in those regions. Unlike wide release action films that open simultaneously in dozens of countries, this title did not benefit from coordinated international premieres, large theater counts, or extended theatrical runs. As a result, its box office footprint in these regions remained modest. Market reception internationally also varied depending on cultural norms and distribution accesses. In regions where action films with well-known stars traditionally perform well, audience awareness excited, but awareness did not necessarily translate into ticket purchase because the film was more accessible through streaming platform. In some territories, regulatory or cultural restriction further eliminated or prevented theatrical exhibition altogether. These factors reduced potential box office contribution regardless of audience curiosity or demand, creating gaps in the international revenue map that would normally be filled by theatrical audience behavior trends play a major role in understanding these outcomes. International viewers, particularly in urban and digitally connected markets, have increasingly embraced streaming as their primarily way of watching mid-scale action film. For many of these audiences, a theatrical visit is reserved for large franchise events, while standalone action titles are considered suitable for viewing. This shift has been accelerating for several years and directly impact how international learning should be interpreted. Lower box office figures in this context do not automatically imply weak interest. They often indicate our preferences for alternative viewing platform. When compared to traditional theatrical action release, the contrast is clear. Film with global cinema first strategies often generate a substantial portion of their revenue from international markets, sometimes even surpassing domestic earnings. These films are marketed aggressively across regions, localized for language and culture, and positioned as cinematic events. This film did not pursue this path, placing it in a different commercial category. Its international box office numbers, therefore, are not designed to compete with or mirror those of globally released blockbuster. Marketing impact internationally was also shaped by this strategy. Promotional efforts were largely digital and platform focused rather than built around theoretical campaigns. This type of marketing emphasized visibility and accessibility rather than urgency to buy tickets. In many regions, audiences encounter the film through streaming interfaces, recommendations, and online discussion instead of trailers in cinemas or physical advertising. While this approach limits box office upsides, its broader reach and allow the films to be consumed across borders simultaneously. In comparative terms, similar action films released primarily through streaming services show the same pattern: modest or negligible international box office total paired with strong cross regional visibility. The value of these films increasingly measured by how they perform a global contact rather than how much revenue they extract from individual markets. For international audience, especially those accustomed to on-demand entertainment, accessibility often matter more than theatrical exclusivity. This film presents an example of how international box office analysis is evolving. Its overseas theatrical earnings are limited by design, shaped by selective regional release, audience viewing habit, and modern marketing priorities. While the traditional box office number remains small, they do not fully represent the film's international presence or audience reach. Instead, the film reflects a broader industry shift in which international success is no longer defined solely by ticket sales but by how effectively a movie travels across region through modern distribution channels. When talking about worldwide gross and break even for this film, the first thing to clarify is how different this calculation look for a film built around modern distribution rather than a classic theatrical model. Worldwide gross in the traditional sense refer to total box office revenue collected from cinemas across our region. For this movie, that figure is relatively small and understated because theatrical release was not the primarily engine of revenue. As a result, the worldwide gross alone does not reflect the film's real financial performance or its ability to recoup cost. From a global audience perspective, the film was designed to reach viewers simultaneously across multiple countries through streaming access. This approach prioritizes reach and engagement over ticket sale, while theatrical release rely on staggered rollout and regional box office accumulation. This film reached its audience through a single platform with global availability. That means the worldwide gross as reported through box office tracking represent only a fraction of the film's total audience footprint. Millions of viewers may have watched the film without contributing to box office revenue at all. Because of this, worldwide gross figures for the film are modest when compared to similarly budgeted theatrical action films. In a traditional model, a film with a production budget in the mid range would be expected to generate well over twice its production cost in global box office to approach profitability. Once exhibitor cuts and distribution expenses are factored in. Here, however, box office receipts were never expected to carry that burden. That limiting worldwide gross reflect intentional distribution choices rather than market rejection. Break-even analysis for this film therefore depend on a broader definition of revenue streams. The most important of these is platform value. Streaming platform invest in film not just for direct transactional revenue but for subscriber growth, retention and engagement. A film that attract new users, keep existing subscriber active or strengthen the platform content library contribute financially if it earns little or nothing at the box office. This indirect revenue is difficult to quantify publicly, but it plays a central role in determining whether a project break even. Additional revenue stream also factor into the equation. These can include licensing deal in territories where the film may later rotate to other platforms, future syndication, bundled content agreement, and long-term library value. Over time, a film can continue to generate value well beyond its release window, specifically if it remains discoverable and rewatchable for global audience. In this context, break even is not a single moment but a gradual process. Distribution costs are another key part of the analysis. Traditional theatrical film often spend tens of millions on global marketing campaigns, physical distribution, and regional promotions. For a streaming focused release, these costs are typically lower and more centralized. Digital marketing platform placement and algorithm driven promotion replace many expensive theoretical expenses. Lower distribution and marketing costs reduce the financial threshold the film need to cross to break even. When all of this is considered together, the relationship between worldwide gross and break even becomes clearer. The worldwide box office total alone would not be sufficient to cover production cost if judged by theoretical standard. However, the film was never designed to break even through box office performances. Instead, it relied on combination of global audience reach, subscription driven revenue value, and controlled distribution spending. In comparison to traditional action films that depend heavily on international box office market to reach profitability, this film represent a different economic model. Its success is measured less by ticket sales and more by effectively it perform a global contact with a streaming ecosystem. The break-even point, therefore, is not publicly visible or easily reduced to a single number, but it exists within a broader calculation of long-term platform benefit. Overall, worldwide gross provided only a partial snapshot of the film's financial story. The true break even analysis lies in the interaction between global audience engagement, diversified revenue stream, and lower distribution cost. Within that framework, the film's financial viability can't be judged by box office total alone, reflecting how the definition of success continue to evolve in the modern film industry. Assessing the profitability of this film requires stepping away from traditional box office scoreboard and looking at the broader financial picture the film was built for. On the surface, if one were to judge profitability strictly through theoretical revenue, the conclusion would seem pessimist. The movie did not generate substantial box office income worldwide, and by classic standard, that would normally suggest an inability to recoup production cost. However, this film operates within a different economic model, one where profitability is measured through a combination of direct and indirect return rather than ticket sale alone. From a revenue versus cost standpoint, the production budget is generally understood to sit in the mid range for modern action film. In a conventional theoretical framework, a movie at this cost level would typically need to earn at least 2 to 2.5 times its production budget in global box office to break even once theater split marketing expenses and distribution fees are considered. The film did not come close to that threshold in theater, but that comparison is misleading because box office was never intended to be the primary revenue driver. The main revenue logic behind the film lies in its value to a streaming platform. Instead of earning money per ticket, the film contribute to subscription-based income. This include attracting new subscribing, reducing churn among exciting users, and increasing overall engagement time on the platform. While these benefits are not reported publicly in dollar terms, they are central to how streaming services evaluate success. A single high profile action film can justify a significant portion of its cost if it influences subscriber behavior across multiple regions. Ancillary income also play an important role in the profitability discussion. Beyond its initial release window, the film becomes part of a long term contact library. This allows it to generate ongoing value through future licensing arrangement, original content rotation, and bundle distribution deal. Over time, these secondary uses can quietly offset production cost, even if no single transaction appear dramatic. Merchandise and theoretical reissues may be minimal or non-existent, but digital longevity replaces those older revenue paths. Another factor that supports a more optimistic profitability outlook is cost control on the distribution side. Traditional theatrical releases often require massive marketing investment to compete for attention, sometimes reviling or exceeding production budget. In contrast, streaming focused film benefit from in platform promotion, algorithmic recommendation, and centralized digital marketing. These methods are significantly cheaper and more targeted, lowering the overall financial burden. Reduced marketing and distribution cost mean the film does not need to earn as much to reach a functional break-even point. When considering return on investment, the calculation again depend on perspective. If ROI were measured strictly in theoretical profit margin, the return would appear weak or even negative. If ROI is evaluative in terms of platform growth, global visibility, and long-term content value, the picture becomes more balanced. The presence of recognizable star increase the film's shelf life and replay value, which strengthen its ongoing contribution to the platform's ecosystem. It's also worth noting that films like this often serve strategic purpose beyond immediate profit. They help define a platform identity, fill genre gaps in the content library, and maintain consistent output for global audience. In that sense, profitability is not only financial but also strategic. A film that reinforces audience trust in platform action offering can indirectly boost the performance of other titles as well. Overall, this film would not be considered profitable under the traditional box office driven metrics. It is far more likely to be viewed as a financial success within the streaming model it was designed for. Revenue generated through subscription, ancillary licensing, and long term platform value balances against control production and distribution cost. The return on investment may not be immediately visible in public numbers, but within the modern content economy, the film's profitability is measured in sustained audience value rather than theoretical surplus. General audience reaction to this film reflect a mix of enthusiasm, casual enjoyment, and mere expectation, shaped largely by who the viewers are and how they choose to watch the film. Because the movie reached audience primarily through streaming, reaction developed more gradually, but they would have with a traditional theatrical release, but they still reveal clear picture across different demographics. From a demographic standpoint, the strongest engagement appear among adult viewers who already have an affinity for action cinema. Recognizable star viewers in the young adult to middle age range tend to respond more positively, particularly those who grew up with classic body style action films and now seek familiar entertainment rather than novelty. For this group, the film delivers a sense of comfort and accessibility, which is often reflected in relaxed, favorable reaction. Younger viewers also engage with the film, so their response is slightly more reserved, often comparing it to faster paced or more visually extreme action content they are accustomed to. Viewers' feedback commonly emphasizes entertainment value over depth. Many audience response focuses on the film being an easy watch, praising its energy, performances, and straightforward tone rather than dissecting narrative complexity. Viewers often describe the experience as fun, engaging, and subscribe title for casual viewing. This kind of feedback is typical for streaming action release where audience prioritize immediate enjoyment and replay value. At the same time, some viewers express mild criticism, noting that the immediate enjoyment replay value. At the same time, some viewers explain mild criticism, noting that the film does not push genre boundaries or offer surprising through. These observations are really framed as trade-off rather than deal breakers. Engagement pattern further illustrate how audience interacted with the film. Streaming availability encouraged viewers to watch at their own pace, leading to steady engagement rather than a single surge of attention. Social discussion, comments, and informal reviews appear across platform over time, suggesting sustained interest rather than short-lived hype. This slower burn often results in more balanced reaction, with audience feeling less pressure to judge the film as a major event and more freedom to enjoy its own terms. Another notable aspect of the audience reaction is now expectation influence perception. Viewers who approach the film expecting a light, action focused experience were generally satisfied. Those anticipating innovation or emotional complexity intended to be more critical. This divide highlight how audience mindset play a major role in reception, especially for genre film position as accessible entertainment rather than prestige projects. Overall, the audience reaction to this film lean toward positive engagement and within its intended demographic. Feedback suggests that viewers largely embrace the film as reliable, familiar entertainment that fit well into the streaming landscape. While it may not inspire intense debate or long-term cultural conservation, it appeared to succeed in keeping audience engaged, satisfied, and willing to recommend it as a casual action watch. Box office performance has long played a powerful role in shaping how movies are perceived even before audience actually watch them. In the case of this film, the relationship between the box office result and perception is more complex because the film exists in a space where traditional theoretical metrics are no longer the primary indicator of success. Still, the idea of box office performance continue to influence how creative studios and audience frame the film values and relevance. From a critical reception standpoint, box office number often act as a background signal rather than a direct cause of opinion. When a film earns massive theatrical revenue, critics may subconsciously treat it as culturally significant even if its reviews are mixed. Conversely, when a movie shows little or no box office presence, it can be labeled as minor or disposable regardless of its entertainment value. The film it lack of a strong box office footprint means critics approach it with tempered expectation. Reviews and commentary tend to frame it as a functional genre driven release rather than a major cinematic event. This framing does not automatically imply poor quality, but it does place the film in a lower prestige category from the outset. Audience perception is also shaped by this dynamic. Many viewers still associate box office success with popularity and relevance. A film that dominates theater feel unavoidable, which while one that bypass cinemas can feel optional. Because the film did not generate headline grabbing box office number, audience are more likely to view it as casual entertainment rather than something they must see immediately. Can feel optional. The perception lower pressure and in some cases actually benefit the viewing experience. When expectations are modest, audience are often more forgiving and open to enjoy the film on its own term. Studio reputation play an important role here as well. Historical studios were judged heavily on their box office track record, with theatrical hits reinforcing audience and financial strength. In the streaming era, however, studios and platforms increasingly release films that are not intended to compete theatrically. For a studio or distributor associated with streaming first release, the absence of box office success does not necessarily damage reputation. Instead, perception shift toward consistency, content value, and audience retention. In this context, the film contribute to a reputation for delivering reliable genre content rather than box office dominance. That said, the industry observes still compare film with genres and box office performance remains are reference point in those comparisons. When placed alongside theatrical action films that generate hundreds of millions worldwide, the film can appear smaller or less ambitious. Genre comparison often favor films that prove their appeal through ticket sales, especially in action cinema where spectacle has traditionally driven theatrical attendance. As a result, the film may be perceived as less impactful within the action genre, even if its actual audience reach through streaming is broad. At the same time, general expectations are evolving. Many mid-scale action films now struggle theatrically despite solid craftsmanship, while similar projects thrive on streaming platforms. This shift has softened the stigma once attached to low box office return. Viewers increasingly recognize that a film absence from theater does not automatically signal failure for genre fans, especially those accustomed to streaming release. The lack of box office presence may barely register as a negative factor at all. Critics and commentarians often reflect this transitional mindset rather than focusing on box office total. Discussion around this film emphasized tone, performance, and entertaining value. The film is evaluated more as part of a content ecosystem than a standalone commercial gamble. This changed how perception formed never time, moving away from opening weekend narrative and toward longer term audience. Ultimately, the box office performance still affects perception, but its influence is no longer absolute. For this film, limited box office visibility position it as a modest, accessible action film rather than a major genre milestone. That perception shaped critical framing, audience expectation, and industry comparison. Yet, within the modern landscape, while streaming success increasingly revivals theatrical impact, the absence of box office dominance does not equate to relevance. Instead, it signals a shift in the absence of box office, how success, reputation, and genre value are understood in contemporary cinema. As a complete viewing experience, the film settled comfortably into the space of competent modern action entertainment without reaching for reinvention. For a cinematic quality standpoint, the film is polished and confident, favoring clarity and momentum over stylistic experimentation. The visual language is straightforward with clean framing and functional pacing that keeps the experience accessible. It may not deliver striking visual signature, but it avoids the chosen over editing that often weaken action film of this scale. Production value is one of the film's most consistent strength. The use of real location, practical action elements, and solid technical execution give the movie a grounded feel. Nothing looks cheap or rushed, and the overall presentation support the sense that is a carefully managed mid-budget project rather than disposable content. While it does not aim for spectacle on the level of theatrical blockbuster, it achieves a balance that appears appropriate for its scope and platform. Performance play a central role in sustaining interest. The lead actor bring presence and charisma that elevate otherwise familiar material. Their chemistry create an easy rhythm anchoring the film even when the narrative lean on genre conventions. Supporting performances are serviceable, contributing energy without distracting from the core dynamic. While the characters are not deeply layered, they are convincing enough to maintain emotional engagement. Thematically, the film stay with familiar territory, touching on ideas of loyalty, resilience, and personal accountability. These themes are presented in a broad, accessible way rather than explored with depth or ambiguity. This approach suits the film's tone but limits its lasting impact. Overall, the film's strength lies in its reliability, performance driven appeal, and solid production values. Its weakness stems from a lack of ambition in theme and structure. It entertains efficiently but does not challenge or surprise, making it a satisfying watch rather than a memorable one. When considering who should watch the film, it had to think in terms of viewing mood and expectation rather than hype or spectacle. This is a film designed to deliver familiar action, energy, steady pacing, and accessible theme, making it well suited for sustained audience time while less appealing to others. Viewers who enjoy straightforward action film are the clearest match. Audience drawn to physical performance, grounded, compact, and a no nonsense tone will likely find the experience satisfying. The film lean into recognizable genre rhythms rather than experimentation. So fan of classic action pairing and modern streaming friendly action titles are well positioned to appreciate its style. If you value clarity, momentum, and character presence over complex plotting, this movie fit comfortably within that preferences. From an age group perspective, the film is best suited for older teens and adults. Mature viewer who grew up with traditional action cinema may feel a sense of familiarity in its approach, particularly in how it balances intensity with humor and emotional restraint. Younger viewers can still enjoy the action, but those accustomed to highly stylized visual or rapid fire storytelling may find the pacing more restrained. The emotional tone is steady rather than extreme, which tend to resonate most strongly with viewers who prefer strong control intensity over constant escalation. In terms of emotional resonance, the film appeal most to audience seeking entertainment rather than deep introspection. Its theme revolve around loyalty, endurance, and physical responsibility, presented in a clear and uncomplicated way. Viewers who appreciate these ideas as background motivation rather than as subject for heavy reflection will connect more easily. The movie offers emotional grounding without demanding significant emotional investment, making it suitable for relaxed viewing session. This also makes the film a good choice for casual or sheer viewing. It works well as weekend watch, a background friendly action pick, or a film to enjoy without needing full emotional immersion. Viewers who like to multitask or watch it in shock burst may find the pacing forgiving and the narrative easy to follow even with partial attention. On the other hand, the film may not be ideal for audience seeking innovation or strong thematic depth. Viewers who prioritize complex storytelling, layered character psychology, or bold stylistic choice may find the experience too familiar. Those who enjoy films that challenge genre norms or provoke extended discussion may feel underwhelmed by its conventional structure and safe thematic approach. Genre preferences also play a role in who might skip this film. Audience who favor high concept science fiction, intense drama, or emotionally heavy narrative may not find what they are looking for here. The film does not aim to deliver emotional extreme or philosophical exploration, and viewer expecting that kind of impact would feel disconnected from its more restrained ambition. Younger audience who are primarily drawn to fast cut visual, exaggerated spectacle, or franchise based storytelling might also feel that the film lacks urgency or scale without the heightened fantasy elements common in superhero or franchise action movies. Its grounded style may feel subdued to viewer accustomed to constant visual stimulation. Ultimately, this film is best suited for viewers who appreciate demandable genre filmmaking and value performance-driven action over innovation. It rewards audience who approach it with realistic expectation and desire for entertainment that feel familiar and steady. For those viewers, the film offer a comfortable, engaging experience. For others seeking novelty, emotional intensity, or bold artistic, it may be a title best keeper save for a low expectation watch rather than a priority viewing.